Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time, a CADSource production. In this episode, I chat with Brett Gilliland, co-founder and CEO of Elite Entrepreneurs. We discuss visionaries, thinking, and growing a business. This episode is brought to you by the CADSource brand Podcast. Podcast is your podcast production team. You know how many business leaders need help communicating their story through audio? That's what we do. Podcast strategy, creation, and distribution for business leaders. This provides opportunities, relationships, and a platform for you and your business. Why do we do this? Because at Podcast, we exist to help you create and share amazing content through podcasts. Learn more by visiting podcast.com. Brett, I appreciate you joining us today. And one of the things that the first thing I want to start with you is entrepreneurs, elite entrepreneurs. But that word, it's a big word. I think it's a word people want to partake in. They want to be an entrepreneur. They want to be a founder. They want to be a leader. And it's exciting. It's exhausting. It's all those E words, right? What is it about entrepreneurs that you like so much?
For me, you might as well replace the word entrepreneur with creation or creator, right? Like, I love the idea of somebody saying, I have an idea and I want to bring it to the world, or I think I can do this thing that already exists in a new way, in a better way. And I'm willing to go put myself out there and create, right? We all have like the same amount of time. I mean, we've heard so many versions of this, but we have the same amount of time. We have the same will or choice, and we have these raw materials of like gifts or native abilities that we've been given, ideas, and we can apply our time and our will and go make something happen. And I love that about entrepreneurs. Well,
create is such a great word. And as I'm sitting here, I'm looking up on the wall, and I got my mom's painting. She's an artist and she creates banners. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but it applies exactly to what you're talking about. Is I was always interested in her creating something from scratch. You know, a blank piece of canvas becomes this piece of art. How do you do that? Well, I'm not an artist in that sense. I found that I was like, well, maybe I'm creative in other ways. And I think when you can take a blank piece of paper, something that didn't exist before, and create it. So it's a business, whatever you're trying to do, it's a fascinating thing to go through. And it's something to be proud of, even if really you're the only one that created it and get to use it, or maybe you get to share it with one other person. But I agree with you that I think being creative or creating something is at the beginning of all of this. And it brings you back to, you know, really why you do what you do. It didn't exist before. And that is something to hold on to. But what happens inevitably is we start building businesses, we start building ideas and thoughts and whatever that might be. And we run into some problems because we hit these obstacles, right? We hit these ceilings that, what am I doing wrong? Because I created this thing, but I can't get above to that next level. And I talked to you recently, and I'm hearing you talk. We're going to go back a little bit on the story, but just want to start with Elite Entrepreneurs because you're helping businesses that have had a lot of success but have hit that ceiling that we just talked about. What is it about working with someone like you to say, we can help you get to that next level? Maybe not even the sales pitch necessarily, but more, why do companies, as I think through this, why do companies hit that ceiling when they've created this amazing thing and they inevitably hit that, can't get any farther no matter what we do? We need to think through this more.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Eric. And we don't need to get salesy with it at all. Let's just get really descriptive.
Right.
There are these predictable stages of growth that businesses go through. And this is a really cool pattern on the ones and threes of revenue. The business is different at 100,000 than it is at 300,000, 300,000 to $1 million, million to 3 million. And so on, that pattern repeats basically indefinitely. It just keeps going. And the reason the pattern is the way it is that on those ones and threes of revenue, the business is roughly tripling in size. Okay. So you just think about what that means. If I go from 300,000 to $1 million, I'm 3x the revenue that I was before. I might be 3x the team size, right? 3x the complexity, but you're a different business at that stage. And the things that get you to $1 million in revenue aren't the same things that enable you to get to 3 million and so on, to 3 million to 10 million. And so every organization is this wonderfully complex system of interconnected parts. Sometimes we refer to them as people, processes, and systems, right? But they're all these pieces, just like your body. The human body is made up of all these interconnected parts and systems. And if you're built for $1 million in revenue, you're not built for a higher level, and you have to upgrade some combination of that people, process, and systems to get there.
Well, that's a good word, is complex. And that's what it is. And we have blind spots to certain complexities. And that's why you need someone to come in there and help out with it. But you live this, right? So you at previous position as an executive and helping a leader of Infusionsoft build out their business. But I want you to tell the story of you were running into these ceilings yourself, and you started building out your business and then realized that you could help other people do the same thing, which is an interesting track to go on, because that's a lot of what we talked about here at our company. Started as an insurance brokerage group, do all that, started creating content. Other people came in and says, wait, can you help me do that? We start helping them do it. Then we start creating more content and then build a marketing company on the side of it. It's like, well, we can help you do the things that we did. So sometimes it's like, once you've gone through that experience, you can then help that other person out. But, and I might not have your story correct as to how you kind of hit your own ceiling, built it, and then showcase it. But I'd like you to share that, because I think it's an important story.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I just want to start out by saying I'm not going to overstate my role in Infusionsoft's success. I'm not one of the founders, but I was a key team member in helping to do this work that we're going to talk about. Okay. And specifically, I was brought in as a consultant early on to help grow the company intentionally. All right. They had received their first round of venture capital funding. They're a 7-figure business. They got $9 million of VC money raised, and they're going to grow this thing. And I came in as an outsider and said, hey, let me help you intentionally grow, do this right, so you don't get stuck along the way and run into some of the common challenges. And so I got to help them articulate their values and build out their hiring process, their onboarding process. I ran their strategic planning and execution rhythm for a long time. It helped facilitate that process every single quarter. So all of the key people processes and the key strategic planning and execution rhythm that I had heavy involvement in over that time. And we grew to 10 million and then to 30 million and then 100 million. And along that path, we were serving small businesses, and our customers were looking at us saying, you're doing it. Teach us how to do it. And so what started out as a consulting gig for me, 8 or 9 months later, turned into a full-time role. And I became we called it the director of Built to Last, because we loved Jim Collins stuff. And we said, we're going to be built to last. So let's do this the right way. And it was a fantastic journey for 10 years that we scaled up to, like I said, 100 million. And we finally said we agreed and started teaching some of our customers our playbook of how we did it, how we did things to grow effectively. And now, 8 years later, after starting to teach others, we've been teaching others now for 8 years, and we've taught hundreds of businesses how to go through that 7-figure growth journey. It's super rewarding and fun.
Well, you obviously leaned into this. Was it a combination of you saying, we need to drive this more, but also a combination, the other side of it, of other people coming to say, like you said, you're doing it, help us do it, to then take that initiative to say, let's go build something around that idea to then go help these other businesses out?
Yeah. And, as a software company, we weren't in business to go train other businesses on how to grow, right? I mean, we were in business to help them grow through sales and marketing automation. That's the software that we provided. But then this other business building stuff was just something that we did really well. We were just practitioners of it and excelled at it. And they recognized it and said, hey, time to learn from you guys, because you're doing it.
Yeah.
And because of my background's in organizational behavior, I'm a geek when it comes to all this. Organizations are complex and their systems. And if you want different outcomes, you got to change all the inputs and mix it up and get a better outcome. And
sure.
That's what I studied in graduate school. That's what I was out consulting businesses to do before I joined full time at Infusionsoft. And so us building a little training business around that was like, I felt like a kid in a candy store. This is all the stuff that I was doing when I started helping Infusionsoft in the first place. Now we're just packaging it up in a way that we can train others, teach others what we do.
There's a couple things there I want to touch on. The first thing is having the vision to go down this path. And I think you talk about vision quite a bit, is that you need a leader with vision, and that vision has to be casted so the rest of the team can understand, where are we going, right? What is the vision? What are we going to do with it? And there's all the what, the how, the why, and that all fits a part of it. But having the vision to say, let's go and do this. Why do you see vision so important? And why is it that a lot of leaders don't have vision or are unable to articulate possibly the vision or just share the vision overall?
Yeah, well, let's start with why vision is so important in the first place. And it just circles all the way back to the first conversation we had about the word entrepreneur and creating. The microphone you're using right now, the desk you're sitting at, the windows, everything that you're physically surrounded by didn't exist until somebody had an idea. Somebody had a vision for what was possible. And then they organized the world to go make that happen, right? And so nothing gets created, no progress, no performance happens until somebody says, we need to go do something. Like, I have an idea about a destination I want to go to. And then they have to assemble the team and align the resources to go turn that into reality. So setting the vision is the beginning of all creation, really. And if you want to just settle into what the world will give you in your current business, you can take what comes at you, or you can choose to go to a new destination and say, we're here now, but let's go there next. And so casting a vision about what's possible and where we want to go together is the first thing that any really great leader does.
You're talking to business leaders and they're coming in there. Do you see that as something that's holding their company back often? Or is it they have a great vision? Okay, that's it.
No, yeah, it absolutely is. And it sounds so corny because most business owners have heard somebody talk about the importance of setting the vision or having a mission statement. But the problem is it's done poorly so often that understandably, most of us write it off. We look at that and go, that's just fluff, or that's just on a plaque in the lobby or the entrance of that company, and nobody even looks at it, talks about it ever. It's meaningless. And when it's done poorly, it is meaningless, actually. In fact, it's often harmful when it's done poorly. When it's done right, it's powerful and it lights up the organization in a way. It provides a guiding light to where, why we're doing this in the first place. I have a very specific definition of vision that we've taken from a book called Beyond Entrepreneurship. Okay. So it's by a guy named James C. Collins. Before he went by Jim Collins.
Yeah, there you go.
This was his first book, and he wrote it with his mentor and his mentor's name is Bill Lazier. It's called Beyond Entrepreneurship. And in there, he talks about values and purpose and mission. And I mix it up a little bit more in line with the Simon Sinek start with why. But I start with purpose, values, and mission. So I just changed the order a little bit because I like to start with why. But once you get clear on why we're doing this, why this business deserves to have life, if you want to think of it that way, the impact on the world, that begins to change the dynamic, the relationship of the people in that business with the business. They're no longer there just to do a job. They're not there just to create widgets or provide a service. They're there for a purpose, and it changes everything. Then if you get clear on the values or how we operate around here, now we can attract people who may be from very diverse backgrounds, and you need diversity for innovation. You need diversity for customer service and all the other reasons why you need innovation. But on purpose and values, you need sameness. And when you attract all the right people from a purpose standpoint and a value standpoint, changes the game entirely. And then you need a clear mission. And what I mean by that is a destination that we're up to right now. We are going there. We will accomplish X by Y time frame. And that just is the rallying cry for that team of people now. Here's what we're up to, and we can pull together on that. So sorry if I ramble. I just get so excited about this stuff that when people do it right, setting the vision is powerful, and it's game changing, literally.
Do leaders come in thinking that they're visionaries when they're actually not visionaries?
They come in thinking they're visionaries, and I would say they are visionaries, but they're not clear enough on setting vision for others. I would say often they're clear about, hey, I want to, go dominate this market, or I want to bring this new thing to the world, or they have some ambition. I would say they're visionaries from an ambitious standpoint. They want to go do something big, and they have some clarity about what that is, but they're not good about bringing a team along with them and co-creating that vision. And that's an important distinction. When you enroll people to go name what it is we're going to go do together, that's a lot different than a single visionary who's like trying to pull people along because they don't share in that vision.
Right. So going back to the one point, I remember being at a large company and they would put out these things. It'd be on the wall, it would be in the email, it'd be in a memo, and it would be like, we're worldwide leaders in customer service. And this is like, that's the mission. Like, and that's, I started seeing that. And I started realizing like, wow, the messaging is bad in large companies, especially in the insurance industry. And that's where a lot of the stuff came in. It's like, let's just tell a real story, and then you get to the mission and all that. But you start creating, you start putting content out there, you start sharing what it is your beliefs are. But that also leads to what you were just saying is they are visionaries, but they're just not clear on what that is because there's just so much going on, right? As a business leader, you have all sorts of things going on. And I want to touch back a little bit more on your background in a minute. But it's possibly that they're not clear because they're not thinking through things clearly because there's so much going on in here in your head. And that takes me back to when we talked before we started chatting here is Personal Offsite, the podcast that you just came out with, where you're enabling people to go out there and give themselves permission to go take some time out of the office, turn off your technology, write, think, whatever that might be. And you've already done it here where you're taking ideas from other leaders and you've kind of crafted them into your own. So it doesn't have to be absolutely 100% as you suggest it, but it could be along those lines. And you start that habit, which is very important to say, leave your office every month, leave your office every quarter. If it's just for 2 hours, just get out of there and go think and do these things, because that will help you become a better visionary, because you are a great visionary. You're just not able to do it yet. So I want to talk about that a little bit of, do you see that? Because you have this visionary who's not been able to cast it, but if they would just free their mind a little bit and go think and write and do all those different things, that would allow them to get to that part.
Yeah, it's super interesting because there's this dynamic in play where you have to go get by yourself to get clear first before you can lead others to clarity. But then it's an enrolling game. Like I got to go enroll others in the process of finishing up this creation or this thinking. Like the thinking's incomplete. I got to get myself to a place of sufficient clarity to go now enroll other people to finish getting total clarity together. That's an interesting dynamic because some of your listeners will say, okay, I'm going to go off and get clear, and they'll get clear and then they'll come back and just be the lone genius again, right? The lone visionary instead of powerfully enrolling others. And then they'll just be even more frustrated because they'll know they can see it clearly themselves, but they can't get anybody to come along for the ride.
So you have a background, and this is going to relate to that. You have a background in HR, I see. And you're talking about bringing people along for the ride. And there's this difficulty, I think, when you're leading people and you're trying to bring them along for the ride and you're not successful in doing it. Perhaps some people are and other people on your team are not. So you have this, maybe it's one person that's not coming along, or it's two people, or it's some, and you can maybe gauge it that way, say, well, these 10 get it, this one doesn't. So you do something. But with HR and managing of people and when to make tough, difficult decisions, hiring, firing, all that kind of stuff. But and I'll bring this up. We just had a podcast recently with Tim Kite, who's the founder of Focus 3, leader, and travels and works with a lot of different large companies, medium, small companies as well, and talks about this relentless attitude of, I'm going to cast the vision and I'm going to bring you along and I'm going to hold you accountable to the different things that go with that. So anyway, that's a podcast that someone could check out. But the idea is you have this background in HR and you're trying to get people, you're trying to lead people. What if you have someone on your team that you don't know if you can bring them along or not? Do they belong to the team? Do they not? Because I think you could have a cynic in the office or on your team that could all of a sudden, that cynic, well, maybe it was 11 people total and the one person's a cynic and they all of a sudden grabbed two of the other people that may have been ready to come on the ride. They went back the other way. So that is something that a leader has to handle. No wonder leaders have so much going on in their mind because they have those little things going on, not to mention growing sales and doing the taxes and doing all the different things that go with building a business. With your background in HR, with your background in leadership and building businesses and hitting up, breaking those barriers, those ceilings, I want to talk about a little bit about maybe the one or a few people on the team that just aren't coming along. And how do you know it? Maybe it's the leader, maybe it's the individual.
Yeah. So actually, when done correctly, this idea of setting the vision where you enroll the team in co-creating that vision is a great filter. It's a great separator, because you start down this path, especially in businesses that we work with. I mean, most of them, if you're in the $1 million to $3 million range, we're not talking about dozens and dozens of employees, right? There might be 10, 20, 30 tops kind of a thing when we start working with them. So we're not talking about tons and tons of people. So you're typically involving most of the company at that point in this definition or articulation of purpose and values and getting clear on the mission. And you can start to see those who are getting fired up about it, and those who are getting fully enrolled and engaged, and those who are like being that cynic or skeptical around it. They're not buying in. And it's uncanny. It's almost without exception when we bring people to our 2-day workshop where we teach them all this stuff. Almost without exception, somebody on the team is, when they go back and start doing this work, somebody on the team will have to go as a result. So you're spot on for calling this out. We talk about this in terms of hire, lead, and fire to the vision. Once you get this vision set, you're going to see clearly those who are not ready to be all in on that, and you're going to see those who are, and those who are just going to bring a ton of energy and a lot of great results. And the ones that aren't, you do need to kind of rip the Band-Aid on that and make the changes so that the rest of the team isn't dragged down by that. They can really be an anchor on this on this ship if you let them be a drag.
It's almost like when someone shows up to your workshop, or perhaps they go out and open up their mind and think a little bit, and they get clear on their vision, they can see who's not clear with them. There's something missing. It's like you're saying, they show up, you're like, oh, wow, this isn't a fit. We have to make this change because we can't have this obstacle in our way every time we're trying to cast this. It's going to bring the team down. And that certainly could be an obstacle to growing your business.
Yeah, and setting the vision is not a one and done event, right? You
can't just put it on the wall and it just off we go.
That's right. And I know that's kind of goes without stating, but let's just reinforce it here a little bit. Your job as a leader, I mean, you basically, as a leader of a growing company, you have 3 main roles. The first is to set the vision. It's all the stuff we've talked about. The second is to build the team to go make that vision a reality. And we've been talking about the team dynamics now. And the third is to secure enough fuel for growth. Or in other words, well, most of us referred to it as don't run out of money. But I don't like that. That's more of a defensive reaction standpoint, right? I want to get into more of a proactive stance of how am I going to make sure we have enough fuel for growth? And your job as a leader is to do those things. And setting the vision is a constant rhythmic thing. Like every time you get up in front of your team, if you're not talking about purpose or values or the mission, you're missing it, right? Like you have to be constantly doing this. And because it's now part of everything that we do in the company, it's really easy to see those who aren't going to make it, who aren't going to come along. And the sooner you get that out, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. And the fuel growth, like you just said, it's taking away, that's a negative, like cash is king. We need cash. We got to get it in. Fuel growth, right? And how do you do that? And I think that's very well said, and something that I think can apply to a lot of people, because you hear them talking about cash and the defensive side of that. With the HR background and with what you're doing, it makes a lot of sense in your ability to lead a team and understand what that's like, because there's so many different dynamics with your team. And I want to go back to the one, use a separator. A separator is a good thing, because if you cast a vision and you have someone on the team who's just like, I'm not seeing it, that's okay. Maybe this team isn't for them. And I think a lot of this is what we're doing right now, is having this conversation, putting out content, having a podcast. Someone could go listen to it and they could say, Brett, I don't agree with anything that you say. I don't want to work with you. Well, that's perfect, because now you don't have to waste the time of having that next conversation, because they were eventually not going to like you anyway, right? Not like you, dislike you, but you know what I mean, of possibly working with you. So I think when you share what your truths are, what you believe in, someone can decide before even having that conversation, which is incredible leverage to have, the media leverage that is, to say, oh, wow, I really like what Brett has to say. I would like to have a phone call with him or someone on his team. And then they take it to that next step. And next thing you know, they're in Phoenix, Arizona and working with you and your team. But that's a separator. And I think those separators apply to a lot of different things. It's completely different than when you're talking about casting the vision, but it's no different in the sense of you have a thought, you put the belief out there, and people then from there can decide, do they want to work with you? Do they not want to work with you? And what capacity those might be.
You're absolutely right, Eric. And that's, I want to just make a point on what you just said. The external branding, the external messaging, communication, when you're trying to attract ideal customers, is one side of the same coin as the internal vision, right? The internal culture messaging. The internal branding and messaging is equally important, and the right people will be attracted to it and the wrong people will be repelled by it, should be repelled by it if you're doing it right. If you're mixing a strong enough batch of Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah.
We like to dish out a really strong cultural Kool-Aid, and those who like it are going to love it here. Those who don't, go find what tastes better for you somewhere else.
Sure.
And I've already brought Jim Collins into the conversation. I got to do it again. I just love a lot of his stuff. But he points out, he uses the term cult-like culture, right? The root of culture is cult.
Yeah.
And we all have these negative connotations around that. So, I know that's a little risky to talk about that. But think about the strength and power of those ideas, the purity of the ideas in a cult, whether or not they're right? In a company, if you get so clear with your messaging, so clear with your purpose, your values, your mission, that only the right people would want to be associated with that, that's when you have a cult-like culture, and it's super powerful, right? You don't have to deal with all the water-cooled talk and the wobble of people not being clear or maybe not fitting in or being a drag. And there's this lift that happens when everybody's on the same page about why we're doing what we do, how we operate together, and then, the specific thing that we're up to right now.
Is that a big reason why you have a podcast, you write a blog, you create content, you put your stuff out there, you're on LinkedIn, you're spending this time because you're trying to build a business and, you're trying to, meet potentially new partners, clients, and all that to work with. Is this all a big reason why you are out there creating content?
Well, anybody who does a business like what you and I do, where we're serving a variety of businesses who have similar challenges, you have to be able to get out there and share that message over and over again so that the right people will hear it and go, yeah, I need that help. I don't do it specifically for attracting the right team members, but when it comes time for me to hire, like you said, there's a boatload of content out there for them to go, I dig what Brett's saying, or I don't, right?
Right.
So it serves the purpose of attracting customers and partners. It also serves the purpose of attracting the right team members or contractors or whoever might be working with us.
For the visionaries, the leaders of the business, and they finally set out their vision, they understand it, they got the right team in place. Does it help them to then create that content or story or whatever that might be and however they're going to do it and share that? Obviously every business is different. So we're not going to go down that path of, what industry and all that kind of stuff, but just overall, as you're helping people go through the ceiling to then create content, will that help them go through the ceiling? Like there's all these other things that you're working on. Is marketing, is creating content, is doing those things. Do you think it helps them grow their business?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Nothing that I do removes the requirement for a business to continue to grow their customer acquisition capabilities, right? And putting great content out there that educates the market, educates prospective customers, partners, etc. That's great business. But no amount of content in the world will solve the business building challenges that we focus on in our business. So it's not to exclude other things you have to do to grow a business. It's just key things that most businesses don't spend time or energy trying to figure out.
Right. So one of the things you can look at, and I'm not in business valuation, my business partner does that, but some of the things you hear talk about is, are your processes and system in place? Do you have the leader? Do you have a vision for the company? And what is your brand, right? If you put all of those things together, and there's obviously a lot of other things that go with it, right? With capital and all that kind of employees and, goodwill and whatnot. But if you put the vision, the business and the process and systems and all that with a great brand, your business is more valuable. And it's more valuable not only on the market, but it's more valuable to work with, right?
Yep. And in every aspect, anybody who might want to touch that business becomes more valuable to them. Until you've done some of this business building work, you know, a lot of business owners don't actually have an asset they could sell if they wanted to, right? It's all sort of built on their own back. And so if they go, the business is gone. You know, to some degree, yeah, they might have a list of contacts, they might have some equipment, they might have some employees, but if they don't do some of the repeatable business process things, they're not going to have a sellable asset. And it all starts with the foundation that we've talked about of purpose, values, mission, the strategies to go achieve that mission, and then something we haven't gotten into yet, which we can or don't have to, depending on what you want to do. But the planning and execution rhythm to turn that vision into reality is the other key component.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the next thing is because you said we've covered a lot of different topics here and kind of on this growth path. So why don't you take this down that path and kind of like the next steps with it all and the planning with it?
Yeah. So we've spent most of our time talking about the foundation pieces of purpose, values, mission. I just now mentioned the importance of strategies, the mission strategies. So how am I going to go achieve that destination? Well, when it's a destination-oriented mission, now I can put actual strategies together that give me the best chance of achieving that mission, right? Whereas before, with the vague idea of vision or mission, strategies are also vague. They're not helping you achieve a certain outcome. They're just vague strategies. So mission strategy, when all that's in place, now we need a planning and execution rhythm. Just like clockwork in a business, that every quarter we do this quarterly planning. Every month, we check in on our progress. We have weekly meetings to make sure that the operational goals are being met. Right? We keep the lights on and business running. So we're trying to balance two ideas. We're trying to make sure that strategic progress is happening in the business and that the operational excellence is happening, right? How do we deliver on the here and now while doing the future enabling work? So a good meeting rhythm, a planning and execution cadence will allow us to keep our eye on both of those things and pull the team together at the right frequencies to make sure we're all keeping our eye on the destination and we all know our unique but important roles, right? We're going to take coordinated action. We're going to row in the same direction to go make it happen.
You're very specific when you talk and knowledgeable about the topic, but you're also very specific in who you're targeting. Right, you've already talked about the $1 million revenue companies, the $3 million, and it's uncanny how it's these different things line up. But you have these specifics in all of it, and having that target market, maybe customer acquisition, just anything that you're doing. Just talk about specific vision. You're talking about the specific process, the fundamentals, and the specific planning that you need to do, and then the specifics of who you're going to go after. You clearly have a background in all of this because you talk about strategy, but you can't just say the word strategy, right? That's another buzzword. Maybe we have best customer service. We have great strategy. Well, what does that actually mean? You got to actually live it. And you have done that. And that's a big reason why I have these conversations. If no one ever listens to it, I say that all the time. It's just I get to have this conversation with you and get to see someone else doing it, living it, having done it already and continuing to grow and have this obvious passion for what it is that you're doing. But it's not just the why. There's specifics behind it. So I just wanted to share that because it's obvious and it's important. And it's a reason why, going back to one of my first questions of why do you like entrepreneurs, is because when we talked about this before, it's just having a conversation with like-minded people is invigorating. It's inspiring. It makes you want to do more. It makes you want to have more conversations and learn more and apply more. And you can get lost with it. That's why you got to go take that step outside the office and go for a walk and go sit down and think through all these different things. And so it's just, I really just wanted to state all that because I see it and it's very clear and it's important. And I think business leaders would do well that are having these, running into these obstacles to work with someone like yourself to help them overcome their business. And if nothing else, like listen to your podcast, Lead Entrepreneurs, right? Listen to this podcast, read your blogs. There's a lot that you can take from it. Go read Jim Collins, right? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you said. That's a great compliment. It's just been a sincere pleasure for us to be able to take these entrepreneurs. Then they are the creators, like we talked about. They're out there doing things that have impact, and we just want to crank up the meaning on that. So, for example, our purpose is to help elite entrepreneurs grow meaningful businesses. And we call them elite because really it's only somewhere between 3 and 5%. The math is not super exact, but 3 to 5% of businesses tops that ever start make it to $1 million in annual sales. It's a rare minority, right?
Yeah.
That's why we call them elite. And we want to help those elite entrepreneurs grow meaningful businesses, meaningful in their impact, in their own purposes, but also meaningful in the scale of impact. Like if they grow from 1 million to 10 million, and we help 100 businesses do that, 100 businesses at $10 million is $1 billion. That's a lot, right?
Yeah, it's a big number.
So we're trying to do something that's meaningful, but it's just fun for us, and to be able to help really great entrepreneurs, again, hundreds of them over the last 8 years, and just give them this playbook and this understanding of the business building things that they have to do. It's just totally rewarding. It's fun.
I think you're in a good place because there's a word that comes up a lot when it relates to advisory services, consulting services, all that. What's my ROI going to be? What's my return on investment going to be? And, if you're saying, hey, we're going to take you from 1 million to 3 million, I don't know if that's how you say it, but there is that conversation. So business leaders they're so inward focused on the business and in the number, in the cash thing that you talked about before, the defensive mechanism. Okay, if I give you X amount of dollars, I need to make Y amount. I need to make X plus Y. Well, there's just so much going on. And perhaps you've overcome that because you're very specific with the numbers on the top end to say, we take $1 million companies and we make them $3 million companies, what have you. But that is a word that has to come up, at least if it doesn't come up in conversation, it's coming up in their mind. They're thinking about, what is my return on this? And it's not just your business. I'm sure it's businesses you've worked with in the past to say, that's their obstacle, is that they're being treated like they're just some commodity that they're going to, all of a sudden, if you work with us, you're going to get this. There's so many variables involved with that.
Yeah, and I love that you're bringing this up. So let me just sort of answer with a question. So if you're a business owner listening to this conversation that we're having, and your current revenue is $1 million, if I were to ask you, what would it be worth to you for your business to go from 1 million to 2 million? Just double that business in 18 to 24 months. What would that be worth to you? Well, to some people, that'd be worth maybe $100,000, right? Some people that might be worth $500,000. I'd pay $500,000 to get $1 million in growth. Yeah. Some people it's only worth 20 or 30,000. Everybody's a little different that way. But to most people, they would go, oh, you're going to help me double my business in 18 to 24 months. There's some value there, right? Yeah. And by the way, the price point to get that value from us is way less than any of the figures that we just talked about.
Right.
Now, the difference is it's not a passive investment, right? Yeah. You can't go put it in a fund and have it grow to that automatically. You actually have to do the things that we know how to do and that we share. And we give you the playbook and the resources and the tools and the support, right? Like it's there for the taking, but not everybody successfully does it. So it's not uncommon for us to see people double or triple their business in 18 to 24 months. That is not uncommon. But it doesn't happen with every single business owner because they go back, they get sucked into the whirlwind, they settle back into what's comfortable, and they don't actually do the things that we're arming them with, right? So it's not foolproof by any stretch of the imagination. But for those who have a growth mindset, believe that they can change the way they operate and apply some new tools, if they're given those tools, it does wonders for them.
It's not always created equal, right? You can use the gym as a perfect example. If you work with a physical trainer, it's like, well, if I pay $1,000 and they give me all the tools and the training and all that, and I do nothing with it, well, perhaps I just lost $1,000. But you could take that $1,000 and you could turn it into, you maybe don't make any money off of it. The return on your body and your health and your well-being and all that could be 100 times that. So what are you going to do to make it worth your while? So I think that's a big component of ROI. If you were like, well, I need to get this foolproof, I need to get a guarantee on it. And there's just so many things just that don't have that. Like, what's the return on our conversation right now? Good luck measuring that, and what's the return on BMW putting an ad in Forbes magazine on page 27? How do they possibly know how many people showed up to their dealership to test drive? They can run analytics. I get all that, but they can't tell. There's so many things that go with that ROI. Yeah. It's a conversation for...
Can't tell with precision. Yeah, there's no way with precision. But when you see enough people getting the result, it's just I mean, the health example is a perfect one, right? Yeah. If the weight loss centers out there are not showing you all the people who signed up and didn't do anything, right? Yeah. They're showing you their case studies, the ones that successfully applied, successfully did the work and got the outcome. And it applies exactly that way in our business. Fortunately, now, after working with hundreds of businesses, we've learned some things about how to increase the likelihood of them succeeding. There are core behaviors or core influencer things we can do to help them keep on the path, but nobody can walk the path for you. And this is no exception.
You have a lot of experience in the past and also with your business. And you just use this thing like you've learned a lot along the way and you're continuing to learn a lot. And you're referencing books that you've read by Jim Collins. Are you refining in your business? Not a lot, but I would imagine you are refining at some level in your business. And I think it applies to a business leader you might talk to that's been doing it for a long time. Is like, no, we're doing pretty good. Yeah, you are. You're doing great, perhaps, but you want to get to that next level. Are you willing to actually refine the way you do things? Are you doing that at your company?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the question. It's very insightful. When we first started sharing this, we literally compiled all the documents and the processes and the tools that we had developed to grow our own company, right? So the binder that we give at the workshop is not a training manual. It's like a resource binder with live examples from our history at Infusionsoft. Well, over time, some of those examples fade, or there might be better ways of doing it. And so we always have to, we got to keep our game at a high level. And so as the world around you, as the market around you continues to improve, if you're not always up in your game, you're falling behind. So we have to do that, just like any business. There are competitive offerings out there. Most of the offerings out there aren't based on people's own practical experience of doing the growth, but they have models and books and podcasts. I mean, there's so many people out there competing for business owners' attentions. Let us help you grow. And so we have to continue to evolve and improve our product offering, the way we interact with customers, all of it. Yeah. It's a continual game.
Well, Brett, it's an important thing to hear from someone who's been through it, is going through it, and to share that. I think we hear it all the time, right? I mean, you can pick up a memoir by a famous business leader, and they would tell you it's a constant learning, always refining, always trying new things, and understanding when you have to put something away and really maybe dive in deeper to something else and go take that time away from the office and keep thinking about it. Is there anything that we didn't maybe touch on that you want to make sure that we hit on in this podcast related to your business? That's kind of an open-ended question, but you have a lot of different things happening. And, we talked about, like you said, the fundamentals and the planning and the next steps. Perhaps it's just, maybe what does it look like if someone shows up to Phoenix, Arizona to meet with you and your team?
Yeah, well, thank you. We do 2-day live workshops. Our foundation event is called Elite Forum. And in that 2 days, we're helping people get really specific with the two things we talked about today: setting vision and getting intentional setting vision is getting intentional, and then getting really disciplined through that meeting rhythm, the planning and execution cadence. So we hit those two things really hard. We do some work around hire, lead, and fire to the vision, which we also discussed. Some future org chart work, where if you're going to build a company, how do you begin with the end in mind from an org chart standpoint? And then we do this really great piece called Big Three, which is really around organizing work. And how do you take all the weight of the business off your shoulders as a business owner, carve off very defined pieces of it to give to capable owners so that they have ownership with accountability. You no longer have to control everything. So it's the process that enables you to relinquish control as a business owner, which is the real power behind scaling a business. So that's what we do in Elite Forum. And then for businesses who like getting ongoing support from us, we have a community of business owners who've been through Elite Forum, and they move into a product or a community we have called Elite Momentum. And so there's just a lot of resources and support for 7-figure business owners who want to grow. And I would just invite anybody who wants to check it out to go to our website, which is growwithelite.com.
And your podcast, I know I've listened to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'm assuming it's on every platform, but it's Elite Entrepreneurs. You're the host of the podcast. One of the podcasts you just did, which is the personal offsite one, is just you talking. There's a lot to that. If for someone to get on there and just talk for whatever, 30, 45 minutes, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of insight and knowledge. You need to know what you're talking about. If you're going to pull out one of these mics and start talking, you better at least be on the journey of knowing what you're talking about, right?
You better have some nuggets, nuggets to share. Yeah. And the company we used to run all that, they advised me to do a couple interviews with business owners, one with an expert, and one with like a solo cast, somewhere I was sharing. And so that's what I try to do, one a month like that. But it's challenging to just get on there and talk to yourself. But I'm trying to share all of this experience that we've been, just touching on today. I'm trying to share some of that in depth so that people who are trying to make this journey can get some value out of it.
Absolutely. Well, I got value out of it. Like I said, if I'm the only one who ever listens to it, which I will listen to it again after we're done here, and it's valuable for me, but I know it's valuable for the team here. We use a lot of this content for its training. I mean, it's like, what do you want to know what we think, or how we ask questions, or how we go about things? Listen to our podcast. People can learn about our company and, learn about you and, learn about the forums and the things that you're doing at Elite Entrepreneurs. And I appreciate just the time that you've given us and sharing your insights, and look forward to staying in touch.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure for me to be on your podcast. I thank you very much, Eric. And if there's anything that I can do for you in the future, just let me know.
One of my favorite things about CADSource is the opportunity to chat with amazing business leaders and entrepreneurs. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn or visit us at cadsource.com. Thank you for listening to this CADSource production, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time. This episode is brought to you by the CADSource brand Podcast. Podcast is your podcast production team. You know how many business leaders need help communicating their story through audio? That's what we do. Podcast strategy, creation, and distribution for business leaders. This provides opportunities, relationships, and a platform for you and your business. Why do we do this? Because at Podcast, we exist to help you create and share amazing content through podcasts. Learn more by visiting podcast.com.